It is January, somewhere in northern Europe, around the year 1300. The sun set 4 hours ago. Inside a peasant house, the air is close to freezing. There is no stove. There is no chimney in most homes. There is one fire in the middle of the floor, and by law, in many towns, that fire has to be covered before the night begins. 8 people are about to lie down in that room and sleep for the next 12 hours. So here's the question. In a house that cold, with a fire that is deliberately put out, how did people sleep through the night without dying of exposure? The answer is not that they were tougher than us. The answer is that their entire night was built differently, and once you see how, the medieval house starts to make sense. Start with the building. A typical peasant house in this period is a single room. Timber frame, walls packed with clay and straw, a thatched roof, an earth floor. There is no ceiling. The roof space is open so the smoke from the fire can drift up and out through a hole or a gap in the thatch. That open roof is the problem. Every bit of heat the fire produces goes straight up with the smoke. Chimneys existed, but they were expensive, and for most of the medieval period they belonged to castles, monasteries, and wealthy townhouses. The ordinary house did not get one until much later. Windows make it worse. Glass was a luxury good. Most houses had openings closed by wooden shutters, and shutters do not seal. Wind came through the gaps all night. Now add the rule that made it dangerous. In many towns there was a curfew bell in the evening. The word itself comes from the old French couvre-feu, cover the fire. When the bell rang, you banked your fire, raked the embers together and covered them so they would smolder without flame. This was not cruelty. A town built from timber and thatch, packed wall to wall, could lose entire streets to one unattended fire. So the safest thing for the town was also the coldest thing for the household. Once the fire was covered, the room started losing heat immediately, and by the small hours the temperature inside was not far off the temperature outside. That is the situation. 12 hours of darkness, a room approaching freezing, and no way to fix it. The first move is the simplest one. Nobody slept alone. Sleeping together was not a sign of poverty or lack of space. It was heating. Parents, children, servants, guests, all in the same room, often in the same bed. Travelers wrote about arriving at an inn and being placed in a bed with strangers. To them, it was unremarkable. Second, the bedding did most of the work. A mattress was usually a sack, stuffed with straw, chaff, or reeds. Straw is a good insulator. It traps air, and trapped air is what keeps you warm. It also had to be replaced regularly because straw compresses, gets damp, and collects insects. Restuffing the bed was ordinary household work. On top went whatever the household had: woolen blankets, coarse sheets, animal skins in colder regions. Third, people did not undress the way we do. The usual arrangement was a linen undershirt and a cloth cap. The cap matters more than it sounds. Not a large share of body heat is lost through the head, and in a room that cold, covering it changes how the night feels. Fourth, and this is the one that surprises people, in many parts of northern Europe, the animals came inside. The longhouse put humans at one end and livestock at the other under one roof. This protected the animals, which were valuable. But it also meant a row of large, warm bodies was generating heat all night. On the other side of a low partition, it was loud. It smelled. It also worked. And for those who could afford it, there was one more solution: enclose the bed itself. The curtained bed we now think of as decoration was originally a heat trap. None of this heats the room. All of it keeps the heat where the person is. That distinction is the whole strategy. But there is something else in the records, and it changes how the whole night looks. Historians working through diaries, court testimony, medical texts, and letters have found a pattern that runs across centuries. People did not sleep in one continuous stretch. They slept, woke in the middle of the night, stayed awake for an hour or more, and then slept again. The sources describe them in exactly those terms: a first sleep, then a period of waking, then a second sleep. And look at what people did in that gap. They uncovered the embers and fed the fire. They talked. They prayed. They checked on animals and children. Some did quiet work. Neighbors occasionally visited. That waking hour is not a problem to be solved. It is a normal part of the night, and it lands exactly where the house needs it most, at the coldest point, when the fire has burned down furthest. Whether the pattern was universal is still argued among historians, and the evidence is stronger for some regions and periods than others. But it appears too often in too many kinds of document to be a curiosity, and it reframes the original question. They did not endure 12 hours of freezing darkness. They divided it, and the division put a person awake next to the fire at the exact moment it needed attention. Here is what I keep thinking about as someone who studies architecture. In a medieval house, the plan is organized around one heat source. Where the hearth is determines where people sit, work, eat, and sleep. The room is not a bedroom or a kitchen. It is simply the space near the fire. The chimney is what breaks that. Once smoke can be carried up a flue, the fire moves to the wall. The roof can be closed off and you can put a floor above. A one-room house becomes a house with rooms, and then central heating finishes the job. When every room can be heated independently, a room no longer has to justify itself by proximity to a fire. It can exist for one purpose only. That is when a bedroom becomes possible. A room you use for 8 hours a day and leave empty the rest of the time. The private bedroom feels like a basic human need. It is closer to a byproduct of heating technology. Which raises the next problem. A peasant house is one room, and one fire almost covers it. A castle is 40 rooms of stone, and stone pulls heat out of everything that touches it. So how do you heat that? That is the next video. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and leave a like.